Moving forward, we have our featured presentation, The Future of CCR Living, with our resident expert, Jack Cumming. Jack, you're on.
Well, thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here. I don't know about being a resident expert, but I'll do the best I can. The topic here is the future of CCRC living, and I can share that the future of CCRC living is bright because I've enjoyed living in the CCRC. I think we all have. That doesn't mean that there aren't issues that we need to address, and NACRA is there for that very purpose. But I think we all feel blessed to be living in the CCRC. I also want to thank all of you for your interest. There are 50 people here today, and that's a large commitment of time and resources and effort as we've been learning. So thank you all for what you've been doing. I thought I'd start by going through a few interesting. I just got a message from the Zoom. But anyway, I thought I'd start by going over some issues and then tell you what I think might be a way we could address those issues. And the major issue for CCRCs is whether they are a lifestyle choice or a healthcare choice. And I think we've seen there's been a tendency in the marketing to shift toward the healthcare emphasis. And that's affecting the quality of the life, and I think it's affecting the industry. And that may be something that we should persuade our industry colleagues to reconsider. The result of that is that the average age at entry is rising, and the big pushback that we're hearing more and more is we're not ready for that yet. And that we're not ready for that yet means that people view this as sort of end-of-life care when you have something that's really concerning toward the end of your life. And I think we can promote this kind of communal living as a collective community for everybody, where everybody can live better lives. So that's a first issue. How do we bring the emphasis back toward the lifestyle that we all enjoy? A second issue is the challenge that the not-for-profits have raising capital, because building buildings and creating communities is a capital-intensive business. And the not-for-profits have no shareholders, which means they can't raise equity capital to use as protection for debt providers. What they've done, though, is to resort to diverting the entrance fees from providing benefits to the residents to securing the debt. And in the windup of these communities, if something goes awry, residents are at the bottom of the heap. That does not have to be. Moreover, there are a number of communities where growth has become a priority for the CEO and the board, but the leveraging involved in growing weakens the corporate financial strength and weakens the position of the residents in the financial security that they have, that the community will be there for the rest of their lives. And as an example, I can cite the case, I don't want to name a name, but a friend of mine moved to a CCRC. I will name it. It was Air Force Village West. He moved there at the same time as we moved to senior living 18 years ago. In fact, we thought we were going to move together, but I wasn't eligible then for Air Force Village. Air Force Village West, you probably know, went bust, and now my friend lives in a tool shed in his daughter's backyard. None of us want that, so that's a major issue. And part of that financial weakness that's inherent in the fact that the not-for-profits don't have access to equity or investors is that many struggling not-for-profit, particularly CCRCs, are being sold piecemeal to private equity firms, leading to a focus on money when the focus should be on the welfare of the residents in their care. So that's a major issue, financial strength. Another issue, the baby boomers are coming, and they expect to have a say in governance. Residents on boards is a start, but it is largely tokenism. The residents are often chosen for their congeniality and collegiality with the providers. And the bylaws of most not for profits have no members or only a parent corporation as a member. So residents provide the equity capital, but they're not even voting members in the organization that they fund with their entrance fees, and they don't have a voting voice as they would if they were shareholders in a investor funded enterprise. That's something that could be easily changed and might even be changed if Revenue Ruling 72-124 were revised to require that the purpose of these communities is to serve the resident beneficiaries and that they should have a voice. In part, as a consequence of that, the village movement and similar co-housing ideas are gaining traction and may evolve into an alternative to CCRCs. That won't hurt us because we're all set in the CCRCs where we are, provided that they stay solvent for the rest of our lives. But that's an industry trend, and that's something to be aware of. So looking at all these issues in context, there are a few things that I would like to see. Number one, residents of CCRCs should be protected from financial failure, just as insurance policyholders, bank depositors, pensioners, and others are. NACRA in 2014, actually, so for the last 10 years, NACRA has been advocating something such as that. I think we did it with more intensity some years ago, but it's still, as far as I know, a NACRA position to advocate that residents should not be in the last place in the event of a financial mismanagement or failure, but they should be protected. And that's something we can pursue. And the other idea is that home ownership is part of the American dream. And yet most residents, particularly in the not-for-profits, are asked to give up ownership rights and move responsibly into a CCRC. I think that there are things that might be done to preserve that ownership dignity, or at least to give residents voting membership in the communities that house them. And with that, I'll just say we deserve respect. I think we have a right to expect respect, and I'll open it to any questions that anyone may have.
Are there any questions for Jack? Please raise your hand. Or just speak up.
Hey,
Yes,
Jack.
Jim.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Barry.
Jack, this is Barry Peters at Windcrest. Have you considered as an other goal for providing greater security for residents that NACRA lead in an effort to persuade states to have higher requirements for cash reserves for CCRCs?
Well, that would certainly be part of it, but I think there's a simpler way to do it. You're familiar with the fact that bank deposits are guaranteed by the federal government, and insurance policies are guaranteed by the state governments. The state model, I think, would work better for the providers. So NACRA's position, wanting to be congenial with the providers, was to go with that state model, and we have a model law that we drafted that would give that security to residents. Now, part of that might be that the providers, then wanting to avoid the financial straits they get into, would agree to hold actuarial reserves. Certainly, they should hold actuarial reserves, and that's something. These are all things that their lobbying organizations have opposed for a long time. So they're numbered. It's just a a very complex issue with some technicality, the ideal forum to pursue it would be the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. And we reached out to Leading Age many years ago, hoping they would join us. They just ignored it. And so now the issue has grown bigger, and perhaps we'll be able to persuade Leading Age to come in again. And I might close by saying I saw Catherine Pearson. You unmuted yourself there, Catherine, and looked like you were going to say something. So I hope you'll jump in.
I'm unmuted again. I also see another hand up though, so I'll try to be very brief. It's good to see everybody. I just wanted to say a couple of things. I find that people reach out to me in cycles as a law professor who talks about resident rights at CCRCs. And boy, have I hit another cycle in the last several months. I did a program for the American Bar Association in March at their request, just a noontime webinar. And it had about 200 people who signed up. And they were all lawyers who really don't know CCRCs all that well. And they had great questions. And after we got off the webinar, I was besieged by requests for more information. I am working with a colleague on a book for the ABA, as a matter of fact. So hopefully that will get done at some point. But what I'm also finding, though, are collateral issues, Jack, that tell me other things are going on. So one of the things I'm seeing is that in refundable fee payments, when somebody passes away or moves out, they are now doing deductions from those refundable fees for things that are not included in the original contract. So one of my friends has recently been able to, a lawyer, has been recently able to get a pretty good settlement that looks like it's going to finalize with a class action this month. So that's something new to me. Another thing that I'm seeing is threats to residents who engage in actions. And even to the point with one community, a very successful community, sending cease and desist letters and threats of eviction. And I now know why. They were in the process of probably doing a change of ownership or a change of management that was pretty serious, big money involved. And I think they were trying to keep anybody who objected to anything, there weren't even big objections, not to object out loud. And that's an estate that has a right to organize in the state law. So I was very surprised by that kind of an approach. I'm doing about 3 more presentations to lawyer groups in the next 3 months, which is unusual for me. Usually lawyers, don't want me to come and talk to them. Lawyers are all lawyers. We all think we know everything already. But the very fact that they're coming and asking me to do this kind of tells me that things are percolating right now, both in terms of some serious bankruptcies going on and financial questions going on, I'll put it that way. So anybody who has things they want to send me, please send me them, because it's always good to have your information, Jack. You and I, as we just discussed last week, we need a long session again. Jack and I always like to talk, and just looking at his view makes me wish I was right there.
Well, we'll be doing that. I might just say that it's no myth that they will come after you if you're active, because my wife and I had to retain a lawyer to stay in residence. They were arguing that the contract holds that if you're disruptive, that you can be evicted. And of course, if you question anything that management does, including cutting back on meal service or whatever, that's considered disruptive. And my activity saying that these places should be on a sound financial footing was deemed to be disruptive. But we did retain a lawyer, and they backed off, and we're living here presumably for the rest of our lives. So we appreciate that. I did see Jim Hennessy flashed his hand, but he doesn't have it raised in the proper way. And Barbara Trout has her hand up.
I do.
And
I
then,
do. I was trying to use my react button.
Barbara, let's see if we can get you into line, because the man from Maryland Continuing Care is next, and then Karen Miller. can you use the React thing at the bottom of your screen or wherever it is on an iPad so that you can get in the sequence?
Yeah, thanks, Jack. Charlie Wagner in Maryland. A couple of comments and questions. It's interesting you were talking about the healthcare model, and it's interesting because the impression I get is that many or some CCRCs, and the trend is to try to dial back on having skilled nursing facilities as part of the life care, in particular places that are in rural areas where they really have a staffing problem. So we become kind of, I'll call it sort of CCRC instead of a CCRC. You answered the one question I was about the guarantees, and it sounds like you're talking about a government guarantee, like for FDIC or pension benefits and whatnot. And I guess I'd also be interested in this revenue ruling, the model law, and also contact information for Catherine. So just those three things. Thank you.
Well, first on the guarantee law, the FDIC is a government program and it's a pre-assessment. So they have to pay in advance. And then if the money runs short, because more banks fail than the money, then they're post-assessed. So they're subject to being assessed afterwards. And sometimes that government fund is diverted. So the better solution is for the industry to form an association, as the life insurance companies have done, and they only get assessed if the failure actually occurs, and that has proven to be much more successful than the bank model. But we're getting into technicalities.
Yeah.
Catherine is at the Dickinson School of Law.
Okay.
So you Google Dickinson School of Law.
Yep. I know.
So.
It's interesting in Maryland, we're not, the CCRCs are not governed by the insurance agency, but by the Department of Aging. And it's interesting, we just went through that. We used to have, I think it was a 10% reserve in the Department of Aging. And I think through our state efforts, got that raised to 25%. So.
Well, I am familiar with Maryland. Many states, the providers have lobbied to avoid being regulated by the insurance department, but the insurance department have experience keeping insurance companies out of insolvency. And so if you view it as just a social welfare program for rich people, you get a different result, which is the case in many states. And in Maryland, when I forget her first name, but Roach, when she was there.
Marty Roach.
Marty Roach, thank you. But Maryland was beginning to move toward a more successful area, and then they backed off from that. I think if you work with Dave Bond, you might get some help there. So I'm not sure who's next because these hands have been jumping around a little. Karen, are you next? Karen Miller?
I'll be fast. We're not going to solve all the world's problems, but I think it would be very helpful if we could get nationally the ombudsman program to take care of independent living as well as assisted and skilled. At this point, if a couple has the same problem, but one's in independent living, that person can get some help. If that person's spouse is in assisted living, there is assistance available. It makes no sense. And the ombudsman program, at least in Florida, works well. It's mostly volunteer. It's something that could be expanded at minimal cost. And I think we should work on getting that nationally.
Okay, that's an interesting thought. Maura?
My question is for Catherine Pearson. Catherine, have you run across instances of elder abuse in independent living? I'm a social work with a specialty in both geriatrics and elder abuse. And there are thousands of articles in the literature about elder abuse in the legislated parts of independent living, nursing homes, assisted living, etc., and none in independent living. And we're getting reports of elder abuse, severe can be, in independent living, where there is no recourse and no studies being done.
Oh. Well, that is news to me. So please send me any information on that. I have not had that kind of an issue come to me before. Occasionally, I've seen CCRCs that get a rogue employee who's just a manipulative person and takes advantage of people, as an employee. And that's happened, but not in an organized way, and usually gets caught pretty quickly. So, but very disturbing if that's beyond that.
Mhm.
Okay. Barbara Trout, I think, because you should be recognized, even though you didn't figure out the hand raising. Can you unmute yourself? Barbara, can you?
I am unmuted now. Thank you. I was struck by what Dr. Pearson said when she went to speak with those lawyers, and then she created a stir there. It has long been apparent to me that somehow this industry called CCRC has to make a bigger dent in the world of lawyers and financial advisors. Those are the people who are likely to be the very people that likely contract signers turn to before they even know what the word CCRC may be. So we need to make an impression on those groups that are out there. And I'm just so glad, Catherine, that you taught them to come to you and get more information. And to know that you also are a life member is another plus for me. Catherine has come to New Jersey several times for our annual meetings. And for those of you who have not yet invited her, I encourage you to think about it.
Yes, Catherine is the tops, and I might add that for insurance policies, the contracts have to be approved and they have to be fair, and that does not apply to contracts for CCRCs, which are not fair. And most of them, for example, mandate arbitration. They have all sorts of clauses like that. So one of the model laws that NACRA had at one time did relate to getting contract approvals. And again, that's an area that the insurance departments have expertise and experience doing, but they would need to have additional resources. The insurance departments, when asked to regulate CCRCs, always push back saying, well, we're overstretched with our resources and we have to have more money. Anyway, Charlie Finley, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm at Lakewood in Virginia. Been here 5 years, and it didn't take long before I was tagged as a troublemaker. I question a lot of the management decisions. Sometimes their incompetence, etc. As a result of that, I've been asked 4 times to leave. All these are followed up by nasty letters from lawyers. That's my background. I've been muted pretty much lately, but I had a burst of sunshine when the book came out about disrupting the status quo, and I read it and probably underlined most everything in it. I happened to be able to show that to our CEO. He'd never heard of it. I suggested that he read it, and all the board members read it, plus our executive director here. He seemed to be quite surprised that I was that forceful to suggest such a thing because I'm only a resident. So we'll see what comes from that. So just a quick question. Do you have a 1 or 2 sentence thought about your reaction to the book?
She has a concept of citizenship, and I think that's a desirable thing. But I noticed that her community is Christian Senior Living, and the residents are not voting members in that. That they have no members, and so it's a nice idea, and she's presented it as theory, and she acts it out in her person, and she's a very lovely lady. You'll enjoy hearing from her. But the reality would require a change in governance, which could be brought about through the IRS, that revenue ruling for the nonprofits, so that the residents would have a voice. But I think it would be difficult to achieve that because the resources aligned against us are so overwhelming.
Well, our executive director has said that it would be over his dead body that they would have any residents on the board. Several of us have suggested that we'd be glad to comply.
Well, that's like Eric Schulte, who's CEO of Pacific Retirement Communities, and I asked him, how would you change if you lost your not-for-profit status? Would you still behave the same if you were a for-profit? And he said, that's never going to happen. We'll always be not-for-profit. So, he just shut that idea down. So I think that's what's important to the industry. And that's something that we have to really think through. So let's see, we've got hands up. Chuck Webb.
I think we should just take just a couple more questions, Jack, so that hopefully you can get everything answered, depending on what's still out there. Go
Okay.
ahead, Chuck.
Yes, I have an issue that's come up in Virginia, a number of different facilities. We had a resident admitted, his wife went to the memory unit, he went to an apartment, and our staff here told him that he was required to provide a personal assistant for his wife in memory unit for 24 hours a day at $34 an hour, and she just sat there. This, I don't know, there's a concept in my mind of some kind of financial compulsion or contractual compulsion where you commit to something and then they manipulate you and force you to do something
Duress,
that's, yeah,
called duress.
duress.
It invalidates those kinds of agreements.
So what is that a legal issue that
It is a legal issue.
and who would you go to get support for that?
Chuck, why don't we try talking tomorrow by phone?
Okay.
And I can give you some resources.
All right.
I've got to go to this other little meeting. My day job.
Catherine, thank you for coming. We've enjoyed your comments. It's been very valuable. We greatly appreciate your time.
Well, I was here because of Jack. It's all because of Jack.
Well, we're glad you were here for Jack, because we were glad to meet you.
Ah, shucks.
All right. Any other questions out there, Jack? You see better than I do on the screen.
I have a question. For Jack, this is Mara. Jack, I'm a clinical social worker, and I teach classes on the difference between medical model thinking and assets-based thinking. And you'll notice in Jill's book, it addresses a mind shift, because people's attitudinal system is what drives their behavior. If you believe something is a certain way, your actions line up with your belief system. So you have to start with the attitudinal system that residents are citizens, partners, equals. And once that is established, the mind shift and how to do it, then the action will flow from that. The entire profession of social work works on the attitude that the client and the social worker are partners in the client's life, not in the social worker expert's life. So it's doable, but it takes a lot of personal reflection and work to kind of get that attitude. So I'm behind Jill all the way because we have to change the attitude first.
Well,
That's
thank you very much for that. I can share. My goal is throughout my time has been to try to change the mindset of the industry. And when I found how difficult it was, I've published to try to appeal to the consciences of these people. But it's very comfortable for them in the bubble in which they live, in which they have total control. And their pushback on changing their mindset, they're not committed toward customers. This is the only industry I know that doesn't value its customers. We could change that, and NACRA can play a decisive role in that. And I'm so glad that NACRA is coming back to life.
Thank you for that kind comment, Jack. It's greatly appreciated, and we're doing our best to move forward, let me tell you. Anything else for Jack or any other questions at this point? Yes, Charles Nadler, I see your hand.
Okay, I just have a comment. We're the customers and we don't get paid attention to, we don't get taken seriously. There's another group of people who have been in that position in the past and they have come up with their own solution. And those people are called employees. And the approach that they've had has been the unionization approach. And I was a union organizer in one of my past careers. And I bring that approach to my CCRC, and management has not been too happy about it when I've brought it in, but it works. And the Resident Advisory Council, which in the past has been basically kowtowing to management, is starting to change, in part because of some of the things that we have done. For example, in the annual survey as to what we think of how management's doing, we organize people to give negative ratings. And then all of a sudden, management wants to know what they can do to get better ratings because they're evaluated on the basis of those ratings by management higher up.
Thank you, Charles. Any other comments? Please speak up if you have them. Okay. I'm going to, at this point, I think we've had our last presentation by Jack. And again, thank you, Jack, for all your knowledge and your direction. We look forward to the upcoming year.